Hey, so I'm going to tell you all about this 14-pound largemouth that I caught and where I caught it at. So stay tuned because I am going to tell it all. So I'm going to tell you all about this 14-pound largemouth that I caught. It's at a pond that is in a neighborhood, but it is a publicly accessible pond, and you can go and fish there today. You can launch kayaks, you can launch canoes, no boats with big motors, and it's almost impossible to fish from the shore. So let me get into some details here, and I'll tell you what I caught it on and a little bit about how to get there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the pond. Um, it's a pretty good sized pond. I think it's like 21 acres or something along those lines. Um, so let me show you exactly where I caught this fish, and we'll talk a little bit about the pond. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. So the name of the neighborhood is Whispering Farms, and this is the neighborhood as seen on Google Earth. If I zoom out a little bit, um, you can kind of get an idea for where it's located. I'll just kind of zoom out a little bit here. So you'll see that it's not far from Louisville. It's in the Prosper area, close to Frisco. And if I zoom in here, you can see this gazebo. Well, there is a gazebo here. It's not on Google Earth for some reason. So there's this circular parking lot that goes around a gazebo. You can park here, but there's like this fence thing that goes around the gazebo area, which makes it kind of a pain in the butt because I've had to slide my kayak underneath it. You will have to have wheels or something to get it down to the water because you've got to get down. There's a couple different places you can launch. There's this spot over here. You can see there's kind of a worn trail. There's another spot that's like, I think this is it right here. You can kind of launch here too. Wear some old shoes and expect to get muddy during the launch and the retrieval. So this is the lake, and I can tell you in this view, you're not going to see all the weed beds and stuff that are in this lake. There's a lot of weeds. In fact, sometimes of the year, about the only thing you're going to be able to fish with is a fluke. Or some kind of like wacky bait rig. I chose a rubber craw on the first day that I went down. It's a salty craw, and we were in a canoe. That was before this place got popular, and that was before this gazebo even got built. So this was back in the early 2000s, I guess. And it was my first time there. I went with a coworker, and the first thing we did was paddle down this shoreline right here. And what you can't really see is there's like this cliff structure that's along the shore. And there's some fish that hang out around those cliffs. If you throw in like any kind of worm rig or anything like that, works good in here. On this other side, this gets really shallow and real weedy up in here. Excellent for a frog. Threw frog baits all over in here and caught fish on frogs. Coming down the bank a little bit, you'll see this concrete overflow for the pond. I caught my bass right along the side of this, like right along the side over here. It was literally like, I don't know, maybe my 10th cast of the day out at this pond, my first time there ever. When I hooked it, I was sitting in the front of the canoe, and there's a creek channel that comes down through the bottom of this thing, and it drops off into about 12 feet or so. And we were sitting over the creek channel. We had a anchor in the water. I was in the front, so the rope was tied off on the front. I threw my salty craw in here, and I turned around and was talking to the guy behind me. And when I looked back over at my rod, the line had started moving. So I reeled in and felt some weight, and I set the hook. And as soon as I did, that fish came out from the side here. I hadn't seen it or anything, and it ran down into the creek channel that we were anchored in. And so I fought it for a few minutes and realized that I had a really big fish on. I thought maybe it was a catfish or something at first. And then it came up and jumped right in front of the boat. It wasn't a jump, it was more of a head shake because she was too big to come out of the water. And as soon as I saw that head, I knew it was a giant fish. So she dove back down into the creek channel, and I was fighting her on 10-pound test on a spinning rod that was not meant for a fish that big. And my knees were shaking, my heart was beating, and she ran forward and pulled out a bunch of drag and wrapped around the anchor line one time. So I started kind of pulling on her a little bit and realized that the line was wrapped. So I got up in the front of the canoe and I took the rod and worked it back around the rope so that she came off of the rope, and then got her up to the side of the boat. And just as I was going to grab her bottom lip, she started to jump again, and I grabbed her bottom lip, and at that moment the line broke, right where it was rubbing on the tooth patch on her upper jaw. And my salty craw was pretty much buried in the side of her mouth, so the salty craw wasn't going to come out, but her teeth had been rubbing up against that 10-pound Berkley big game, and broke just as I put my hand on the line. So the first thing we did was came back to the shore over here where we could take a bunch of pictures and stuff of the fish. And those are the pictures I submitted to Lake Fork Taxidermy to have it turned into a fiberglass replica. Truly awesome fish. Over on this other side, there was, I don't know if it's still there was a floating platform that's completely surrounded by weeds. And if we zoom in a little bit here, you can see some of the underwater weed beds. There's a lot of life in the weeds in this pond. I believe there's still some monsters in here. I've heard multiple stories from folks when I've gone down there about them catching 7-pounders, 8-pounders, 10-pounders, 12-pounders. So it definitely is a big fish pond. It's got plenty of small bluegill and sunfish. It's got minnows. It's got all kinds of stuff. The creek runs all the way up into here behind these houses, and you can get pretty far, but then there's some spots where it gets real shallow and there's some log jams and stuff. But it's fishable, I believe, like all the way up to here. This is private property all around the lake, so I wouldn't get out. I have seen people come in through this gate here and come down here to park and to fish, but that gate looks like private property to me, and I don't park on people's private property, so I pretty much stick to the gazebo entrance. I haven't fished here in probably 5 years or more. I heard that it was off limits to kayaks for a while, but I think that now it's open again. There was a fight against the city that put an ordinance up banning personal watercraft, and I think that that's been lifted, so I might have to go give it a try again. It's a cool little lake. You can cover the whole thing in a day with no problem. But just knowing that this is a giant fish producer has a lot of people going there. I don't know how many people are catching and releasing versus keeping or what else, but it's also very hard to fish from the bank. It doesn't look like it, but these bushes and everything else around the sides make this lake very hard to fish from the bank. So anyway, that's the story. And if you go out there and fish, just be respectful. The neighbors here could end up fighting it again if people start leaving garbage and stuff behind. Just go out there, be respectful, have a good time, and hopefully you'll catch a monster bass.